He's a rocker. Doctor.
Don't tug on that. You never know what it might be attached to.
Inventor.
Activate oscillator.
He's broken the sound barrier. Philosopher.
No matter where you go, there you are.
And the only hero.
Buckaroo.
Buckaroo.
Buckaroo. Curse you, Banzai!
Who can save us all.
Evil! You're inseparable from the 8th dimension! Venom! Launch thermal pod.
Buckaroo Banzai is pure nutty fun.
Buckaroo, you would have got your thruster.
Why don't you hold on to him for a while?
The cult sci-fi classic.
Run!
In a dimension all its own.
Real life Martians landing in New Jersey.
We will fire a portable beam weapon. Vaporize the whole damn planet?
If we blow this today,
Get him up.
there ain't no tomorrow.
Left, I said left. This is left. I mean my left. Your left, so you're right.
Buckaroo, the president's calling about is everything okay with the alien spacecraft from Planet 10, or should we just go ahead and destroy Russia?
Tell him yes on one and no on two.
The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai.
Which was yes, destroy Russia or number 2?
Many a truth told in jest.
All right, welcome to Movie Night Extravaganza, Season 2, Episode 3, Movie Night Invasion, I guess is what we're calling this part of the season. Just doing alien movies, assuming, you know, the 3 people watching right now know that, because I'm assuming it's not anybody new, but all right, I am here with J. Andrew World, who is perfect.
Of course I am.
And he's going to be leading this conversation because I really am not as well versed in the the chronology and knowledge of Buckaroo Banzai. So I'm going to take a little bit more of a step back this time.
I was raised on the teat of Buckaroo Banzai, as one might say.
All right, Conan Rawhide Neutron, another member of this great entourage, the Hong Kong Cavaliers over here. We have RC Charlie Roberts, goes by Charlie, but I don't want you to get rid of the RC. I think that's
I hear it's a great drink.
I was gonna say I love your cola. Yes.
Top
shelf.
But, plug your Substack, because I can never pronounce it. And
you can't.
myself.
Anime Fabio.
Yeah. God, you can't speak Latin. God, no. Ferocia Anime is the name of the Substack, and I will spell it once here and not at the end. FEROCIA space ANIMI. Ferocia Anime.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for not making me embarrass myself.
The condescension is just gonna get worse.
Until morale improves.
Yeah. And of course, we have Nathan Robinson, current affairs editor-in-chief, and the author of Why You Should Be a Socialist. I'm really excited to have you on here. This episode's been in the works, I think, for a few weeks, and we were trying to figure out what movie to do, and then Andy finally pitched this one. I'm not going to take credit for that.
Or the blame.
Well, picture this. I was 9 years old. My dad took me to the World Science Fiction Convention. He wanted to go to a panel I had absolutely no interest to, so he left me at a theater where they were showing the director's cut of this film. At one point, like I knew I was hooked when they got to the scene where John Lithgow goes, "Where are we going?" And everybody on screen and everybody in the theater goes, "Planet 10! When are we going there? Real soon!" It's just like, I'm like, I found my people. Not everybody gets as fortunate as me to find their people when they're 9, but here we are.
Yeah, your people are all named John.
Yes,
apparently. Is that what the J stands for in J Underworld? John Andrew World.
It stands for John Big Booty. Yeah.
Well, it's not small berries.
I forgot about that one. Yeah.
But this was supposed to be this cut over Nathan's intro. How's it going, Nathan?
Oh yeah, it's great. Wait, there's a director's cut of this film?
Yeah, it's lost to time though, because the original footage is gone. There's still some VHS copies floating around from the 80s.
Does it clarify some things?
Not really.
Okay.
Such as the plot?
It does have like the extended opening where they have Jamie Lee Curtis as Buckaroo's mother, where Buckaroo's father dies trying to reach the 10th dimension, and he's working with the doctor who's played by Robert Ito, and I just blanked on the doctor's name, who also worked with Lizardo, but not Mr. Wizard, and the explosion kills both of his parents, and so that's like how the movie opens. But they thought it was kind of a bummer opening, even though they had Jamie Lee Curtis in like his little cameo.
Yeah.
That footage survived, so that was able to be restored in one of the later DVD releases. So there's basically like 3 versions. There's the DVD release, which is probably the closest you're going to get to a director's cut. There's the lost director's cut, which, like I said, they actually have they tried to restore the lost bits as best they could, but because they're working from VHS tape, the quality just isn't there. So they didn't want to use them in the film, but they wanted people to see them because they're just these great moments, like where Vincent Schiavelli was like just sitting there in the middle of the van, and he has a battery in his hand, and there's a straw coming out of the battery, just sucking on the battery acid, and he turns to Christopher Lloyd and goes, "You want some?" And Christopher Lloyd just goes, "No, thanks, I'm driving." And that's the scene.
Hey, you didn't even mention the 6-hour David Lynch cut, which of course, answers all the questions you want answered, but then raises 50 more. I don't know. I've wanted to make that joke ever since I found out that there were multiple cuts. So before we get
I have a question. Will this be on the final exam?
Maybe.
Before we get into analyzing this movie, though, one of the lines in this that's really funny is when they mention Orson Welles, and the first thing that the first thing they say is the guy from the wine commercials. So I wanted to play the really famous video of Orson Welles shooting those wine commercials and getting already having ingested I guess it's champagne commercials technically, but already having seemingly ingested tons and tons and tons of champagne, or it's not technically champagne because it's from California, but the American equivalent of champagne, I guess.
It's sparkling socialism. We will sell no wine before it's time.
Turn camera. Mark. 102, take 1.
With overlap, action please. Action Orson, please.
Just do anything?
No, sorry, cut.
Yeah, rolling.
102, take 2. Ah, the French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence. It's fermented in the bottle, and like the best French champagne, it's vintage dated. So Paul Masson. 102, take 3.
Action please.
Ah, the French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence. It's fermented in the bottle, and like the best French champagne, it's vintage dated. So Paul Masson.
Amazing. There's some great stories too about how when I think he was trying to raise money for Other Side of the Wind at the time, and there's some great stories.
A movie that was it's interesting. We had Joseph McBride on, and he spent 5 years being directed by Orson Welles during this time period. So I can't even imagine how, like, because Orson Welles had gone through he was going through such a bad moment of alcoholism at his death. Like, it had just gotten to the point where he wasn't even capable of living by himself. I think he was living with the guy from, he was living with Peter Bogdanovich, I think, in his in his garage or something. So it had gotten really, really bad by this point. And
his final performance was in Transformers the movie.
I mean, he was still making movies. He just was so down the rabbit hole on it, and I mean, if you ever actually see, which it's available to stream now, if you ever actually see Other Side of the Wind, it's pretty good. Like, it's bizarre, and it's sort of like, this took you that long, but like,
how's Joe's performance?
Fantastic. Yeah.
All right.
Well, and there's all kinds of
come back on. No, he actually wants to.
I think he wanted to whenever after
we emailed back and forth about it, and then I think probably in January or February I'll ask him, because he was such a fun guest to have. But
and he's got that new book, right?
Yeah. So I think he's doing promo for that everywhere.
There's a documentary that came out at the same time called "They'll Love Me When I'm Dead," which I actually think is more entertaining than the actual film, which is good. That's highly recommendable. Anyway, I didn't mean to like take it off topic by like throwing it to Orson Welles, because I think it's funny that like, oh, the guy from the wine commercials, because at this point, like when Buckaroo Banzai came out, that's what it would have been, you know.
Yeah, well,
the game was a long time ago, man.
Like this movie is just like every moment in this movie is just full of tangents like this.
Yeah,
like why is Yakov Smirnoff a presidential aide? You know, and the actual story behind that is Yakov Smirnoff was just came to the States, was and out in Hollywood doing his stand-up routine, back in Soviet Russia, and
stand-up routine, yes.
and they liked him. They're like, here, be in our movie. And he's like, well, what part am I? Like, I don't know, we can have you be a presidential aide. And they're just like, what?
The Toast of Branson, Missouri, Yakov Smirnoff. Nathan, had you seen this movie before?
No. No, never once. I'm certain. I know I'd heard of it. But I didn't know anything. No, I didn't know what I was getting into at all.
Quite the ride.
This was something. This is an interesting choice for me.
I told Andy I was looking for a movie choice. I was specifically with you as a guest, and then also knowing that this is the month we're only doing alien movies. So I guess that overlap leads to some interesting possibilities.
Why did you pair me particularly with this movie? I don't object to this choice. I just see it seems like there were reasons. There was some connection in your head.
Mostly
tell us, Forrest.
It's really
fascinated by what it was.
It's really your choice of wardrobe. I mean, you're like the sharpest dressed man on the left.
Not even wearing a tie today.
Yeah, I know. I feel overdressed.
I was gonna say that's the reason Forrest is having Andy run this. It's because he's the best dressed.
Yeah,
he's got the tie and everything.
I got just subjugated by Andy's dress.
Tough liver?
Hey! It's a close second.
Oh,
Jeez.
Okay, all right.
You know what, Conan? When you dress like that every single episode,
yeah, I know it's not special.
Kind of makes it so that when Andy kind of brings his best.
You get my silk. You get a tie on.
You get a silver trophy. It's extra shiny. It's okay.
When Andy dresses like Tony Soprano going to a PTA meeting.
Fantastic.
Tony Soprano never had such nice hair.
So that's the only reason you picked this movie for Nathan?
Really? Yeah, honestly.
Strictly on a apparel basis.
I wanted to draw him like with Buckaroo Banzai. Just
I see. It was for that art. Well, yeah, it paid off. I mean, that art was worth doing.
Yeah, it was really
treasure that.
It was not shallow. Plus, like I said, it's a great film. I mean, it's so enjoyable. Like,
I agree with that.
As you dig into it, like there's just like every line is like so much to it. Like Dr. Lizardo, wasn't he on TV? You're thinking of Mr. Wizard.
Who is Mr. Wizard? Is that a thing? I didn't know what that. I said to references. Is that an actual thing?
Person? Yeah, it's like Bill Nye before there was Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Yeah.
Like in the 70s.
Like a Bill Nye from an earlier generation, slightly less kind of funny and more just like, hey, we're gonna do science now, and like basically taught a bunch of kids like me how to be interested in science.
Yeah, I think Conan, we're like on the edge of the end of Mr. Wizard.
Yeah. Mr. Wizard was great.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm certain that I missed a lot in this film because I didn't grow up in the late 70s, early 80s, where it seems like this film is packed with references to things that kids growing up during that time would understand.
It's basically peak Gen X before they were making Gen
Yeah.
X movies is the best way to put it. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah,
And that's why it feels like it doesn't go anywhere. No, I'm kidding.
Ah!
That's my Gen X, line.
Nice one, Forrest.
This is my first time watching it as well, and I'd heard of it through because when I was younger, I read a bunch of strange film books. I think because I've always wanted to do something like this show, and or talk about film. I mean, I wanted to direct film eventually, but so I read a bunch of books and watched a bunch of stuff about strange movies, and this came up a lot. But then I never ended up really being like, oh, let me watch this. So it was I think it was an interesting experience doing that because this is very much not my generation either. Hashtag not my generation.
I mean, it's barely my and Andy's generation, right? Like we're right on the cusp of it.
I mean, I was like I said, I was 9. It was 2 years after the movie came out. Whenever I first saw it.
Yeah, the only reason we know it is because both our parents would bring us to movies we probably shouldn't have been watching at the time. See RoboCop. But I mean,
parents don't do that anymore. They just hand out participation trophies.
Exactly.
No, I'm kidding.
Goddamn right. But I mean, I think it's amazing that I'm just gonna pivot away from that. By the way, that Peter Weller's character, the titular Buckaroo Banzai, it's not like a winky, naughty leading man thing. He's basically doing a Bogart. He's playing it straight. It's just the world around him that's
no, everybody. Well, except
nuts.
for the aliens are playing it straight. And the president and his men, and
the other 98% of the cast, but yeah,
no, the core, the Banzai and the Hong Kong Cavaliers and the Blue Coat Regulars, they're all they're all pretty much playing it straight for the most part. Although when the kid does come out with the sawed-off shotgun, yelling, step back or I'll suck your blood or I'll drink your blood, that was kind of intense.
It's 3 years before RoboCop, right? It's not because this is 1984, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not it's interesting that it's not a winking nod to RoboCop or anything like that, because I think Peter Weller became most famous for that, and I think RoboCop is an excellent movie. And it's another kind of movie that's satire, kind of camouflaged in an action movie. So it's interesting that they're both in that genre, but I think it's cool that he's cast in this before. I don't really know about his career before this. If you guys want to enlighten me,
he still did some movies before this. I think his first starring role was in 1980, if I remember correctly. But I am not a Peter Weller expert. I will say, if you really want to see a great Peter Weller movie that's completely underrated, The Naked Lunch, which we probably should do sometime.
Oh yeah, the Burroughs adaptation, which is quite fun, despite mugwumps being actually represented on the screen, which was a questionable 80s decision to say the least. But it works. It's
all practical effects and it's wet as possible. It's fantastic.
It's on par with Alien for the wetness factor. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think this is interesting with both Nathan and I on the panel as people that saw this for the first time.
Wait, did RC see it for the first time?
Yeah.
What the hell, man?
Oh yeah, I forgot you're on this.
And Charlie saw it for the first time too.
Right.
But no, so I'm saying the gap, I guess, between understanding, and I won't play this whole thing, I think, because it's 5 minutes, but so Kevin Smith is one of the Gen X people that are fully represented by the timeline, I think, of this movie. And in 2011, he had this show he was doing with New York Film Festival, where he would go and play movies, I think older movies that he felt hadn't gotten their due yet. And he would talk to the people that made them about it, which I like a lot as a concept for a live event, I guess. He would do these Q&As. So he had John Lithgow and he had Peter Weller on with him to talk through this movie. And it's interesting that both of them clearly didn't really understand where the movie was going either. So I watched it and felt like there was a lot of references that I wasn't getting. And I was like, am I supposed to be getting something here? And then watching this kind of made me feel a little more seen by by my lack of understanding.
Let's begin with the first moment you guys get the script.
It's got to make an impact. I mean, you know, if you, I'd be so disappointed if you're like, I don't remember. Like, it's one of these scripts that you got to open and be like, Jesus Christ, this could ruin everything.
Right. Well, that's pretty accurate, Kevin. It's I was completely bewildered by it and had no idea what to make of it, and I didn't agree. I didn't really want to do it. It was way too out there for me, but I sat and met with W.D. Richter, Rick Richter, and Earl Mac Rauch, and they were so enthusiastic and exhilarating. They completely sold me on it in like no time at all. Like the minute I met them, I thought these guys are going to be so much fun to work with. And in fact, I remember Rick even saying that. He said, just do this movie. Either it won't work and it'll be nothing, or it'll be really, really interesting. And I thought, well, that's a good philosophy of life. And I signed on and immediately started loving it as we gradually put it together.
And did they go after you? They were thinking specifically about you. I think I'd read somewhere from the jump.
Yeah.
Based on what do you think? What did they see you in?
He said, of all things, I was in a very little, kind of very naturalistic movie that was made in New York in the late 70s called Rich Kids. And I just played a kind of anguished, foolish, divorcing father of a daughter, of a young daughter.
Yeah, I can see the influence here.
Yeah, I mean, it had absolutely. I mean, it was very earnest. You know, he was kind of a comical, foolish character, but it was very earnest, real. You know, it was not unlike me at all. And he said, "That's my Lizardo." I thought, what does that mean? But tell us about your first look at it.
No, I felt the same way. Richter came after me. I guess he's seen me in Shoot the Moon, and I read it and I couldn't get through it. I mean, it was like reading an almanac or something, and I just I didn't. But your panegyric for the film, I have to say, is one of the. It's one of the most articulate. Not just because I'm in the movie or John's in the movie. It's one of the most beautiful summations of the film ever. Because I have to say, at the end of the day, one of the guns of 20th Century Fox called a meeting for me when the movie was about to come out, and I said, well, I'm going to promote it and so forth. But no, they said they want to meet, and I sat with this woman, and she said, in your opinion, how should we market this film? And I knew that it was by that it was a great film, but that Fox had no clue what this film was, man. But no, I didn't quite understand it. They came after me like John, but once you met the writer of it, Earl Mac Rauch, who's a real savant. He was a summa cum laude at MIT in engineering, and he wore his little buzz cut, and he wore these marine pants and red Converse All-Stars, drove around in a pickup truck with a golden retriever, had big sort of convex glasses on, and you never knew what was coming out of his mouth. Then I knew, the sort of genius of it, but I didn't understand it, and I don't quite understand it to this day. And as a matter of fact, I think you explain it, because it's a genre defier, really. Is it a comedy? Yes. What is it? An action adventure? What is it? A science fiction thing? I don't know what it is.
That's what's beautiful about it. It's like column A, column B. It's basically it's Fat Man's Delight because it's a buffet of movies.
Yeah,
there's everything you get to pick from. A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah, but
so do you guys need me to explain this movie to you?
No, I mean, I'm not exactly saying that you need to explain this movie, but I do find it interesting that, like, after watching this movie and being like, I enjoyed it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's an enjoyable movie to watch. It's a fun movie, but like, it made me feel a little bit better that like the stars of the movie are still going around talking about it. Like 30 years, 40 years later, in like, still actually being like, because they've done other events where they've gone out and talked about it, including, I mean, there was one in like I don't remember if it was Dallas or Austin, but the filmography wasn't very good. Like the camera was really shaky, and I was like, I'm not watching 40 minutes of this. But like it's in all of them they kind of make the same like, can you explain this movie to me joke. So it kind of felt interesting to have a movie where, because I think there's actors will do promo for stuff, right? And sometimes actors will clearly not understand the movie, but like still kind of act like they do and be dicks about it, like Bradley Whitford and everything he's ever been in, including Get Out, including like like there's just so many movies Bradley Whitford has been in that he doesn't quite understand, and he still kind of acts like he does, and then people catch him in it, and I hate that. But then I also hate when people are kind of hostile, like they didn't understand the movie, and they're like, I don't know what I was in, and that happens a lot now. I kind of like when it's like, listen, if you guys enjoy this movie and you think it's fun, I salute you for that. I thought filming it was fun, but I don't necessarily completely understand where it was going. So
I'm happy to say that I do need you to explain this movie, because the fact watching Peter Weller say that he needs someone to explain this movie gives me the confidence to say myself that I also would like you to explain this movie.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Nathan, because I have a movie podcast, so I can't say that.
It does get really confusing because, first of all, it's set in New Jersey, but obviously filmed in California. So nothing looks like New Jersey in the film. And then they also fly out to Texas, which is also California. And it's very obviously California again because
it's happening in Austin, baby.
But basically, and somehow you can fly like immediately from like, performing brain surgery in New Jersey to Texas, go through a mountain and go immediately back to New Jersey like that, which is amazing. So like the movie is kind of confusing geographically whenever you think about it. But it starts off, Banzai is they don't know where Banzai is to do this experiment. They think he chickened out, but he's actually with his old college friend, played by Jeff Goldblum, better known as New Jersey in the film. But he calls him Sydney, and they're performing brain surgery because apparently this person had a brain problem. They're putting a chip in the head so they can voice activate their body, so they won't be paraplegic anymore. And apparently it's an Eskimo that they're doing this to, because there's this line like it's like throw ball, no more like throw harpoon. That boy's an Eskimo, which is just like the best line.
See, just that scene alone, that would be a full movie.
Yeah, and like
in other hands.
So as soon as he gets done, he flies out to Texas to do this test on a rocket car, and he then goes to phase 2, which was not part of the plan. The government didn't expect him to go into phase 2, which was to drive through the mountain. They were just trying to see if they could break the sound barrier with the car. So everything was flying success. And then he takes it to phase 2, but only he and that doctor who's played by Robert Ito knows what's going on with this. He goes to the mountain, which is then all of a sudden like televised after it was done, because he just drove through a freaking mountain. And Dr. Lizardo, who is actually possessed by the spirit of John Worfen, who is an evil lord and a red lectoid from the 8th dimension from Planet 10, and he decides to murder his way out of the insane asylum that he's living in to go to Yoyodyne to steal the oh man, my brain's saying flux capacitor, which is not what it's called, but
it's the MacGuffin.
Yeah,
it's all that matters.
That makes the machine go through the wall, go through the mountain. So that's where this whole movie begins. Is all that.
Can I ask clarifying questions?
Sure, go for
it. Lizardo, he's not an alien. He's inhabited. He's possessed.
Yes,
but he's different from the ones that look like humans but are actually aliens. He looks like a human and is a human, but has an alien kind of in his soul somehow. Well, I mean, is there anything left of the original Lizardo, or is it just an alien speaking through him?
I think that's why he comes across so like manic through the movie, because the original Dr. Lizardo, who probably wasn't all there to begin with, is there, because remember, like they show the scene where he's on that little like track, and like, no, don't do that, not yet, and he goes through and he gets stuck in the wall, and then you see it from his point of view, and there's like these aliens there. That's when he gets possessed, and so I think that there's still something of Lizardo in there, even though like they never really quite they don't go in at all with the
that's the MacGuffin in question.
Yes,
Thank
the
you.
Overthruster. And they don't explain at all any of this really. That like how the mechanics of it works.
This is not a movie that's interested in explaining much of anything, frankly.
No. Now,
one more clarifying question. Why is Jeff Goldblum dressed as a cowboy? Okay.
For the swag.
It's the Wild West, and you never quite understand what's quite going on. But you know what? You're going to just enjoy it.
I think these are sort of questions I shouldn't ask. Actually,
Yeah.
this is other movies you ask these questions. This movie you don't ask these questions.
Yeah,
This is not what I would call a logical film.
No.
Except that I have a sense that there are, in fact, reasons in the writer's
There
head.
are reasons,
all
yeah,
of
for
these
sure.
things.
But like, it's not Euclidean logic, is what it is. It's like this is logic that like it makes sense. I'm sure to the people.
It's an intuitive kind of logic.
I think he's just trying to impress the Hong Kong Cavaliers. Is really what it boils down to. They're all rock stars, and he's like, "Well, I can dress like a rock star," and then he shows up dressed like that.
And you got to send out an SOS. You got to send out an SOS to Ben Burgess and ask him to explain the logic going on in the Buckaroo Banzai universe.
No, yeah, and I think Nathan's right. Everything is like really well thought out. They just don't really put it in the movie because like there's just so much of it's just
no time. There's so much other. There's like a million more ideas to get through.
Yeah, because we haven't even gotten to like Penny Pretty.
Right. Well, it's like that the watermelon, right? Like I know that there is a reason. Like I know that is they have an explanation. And in fact, Forrest, I think you sent a clip where the guy says like there's an explanation for the watermelon, but then he doesn't give the explanation. He's like, if you watch the TV commentary, we explain it.
Fun story.
He's like, I'm sick.
Can you tell me? And he's like, no, you have to watch it.
Yeah, he's like, I'm sick of explaining the watermelon. I explain the watermelon all the time. Here's a recipe for watermelon chicken. And
just tell me what it is.
Okay. 20 years ago, the director actually ran the Bonsai Institute website. The website's still up, but all the stuff that he did is gone. And he actually explained right on the website. No, this was like, God, this is like 95, 96, like early days of the internet. Apparently the whole thing was they were making anti-grav watermelons so they could drop them from planes and they won't splatter. They'll just lightly land. But unfortunately the watermelons would just keep floating away. So that's why it was in that press, so they wouldn't lose the watermelon because they couldn't quite get the anti-grav to work quite. But they're going to end hunger with watermelons.
Okay. I'm satisfied with that.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Wasn't that Elon Musk's plan on end world hunger? He's like, I will donate all the watermelons I have if you tell me how you're going to use them.
Yeah, someone's just gonna have to teach him how to spell watermelon, but he'll do it.
Is it spelled differently in like different parts of the world?
No, I'm being a dick.
No, he was doing an Elon Musk is dumb joke, which I appreciate.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that there weren't like levels, like a Buckaroo Banzai joke.
So
Well,
we were
you can't
chatting
spell it because it's not emeralds. You know, Elon Musk can only really spell the word emeralds because that's the thing he stole from his dad.
Well, I like that this film basically doesn't bother trying to explain anything. It just drops into this world that it feels like it's like, I think I said, like, the third movie out of a much beloved franchise worldwide, where it's just assumed like, oh, it's Buckaroo Banzai. Of course, everyone knows who he is and like plays his video game and like whatever.
And watches him on TV. Apparently.
Watches him on TV, gets their brain performed on by them. He does racing in the desert. Like it's Buckaroo Banzai, of course.
Buys his records. Supports his Bandcamp on Bandcamp.
Yeah, exactly. BuckarooBanzai.bandcamp.com. The addition, but like I like that it just doesn't do what a lot of movies these days do, which is completely over explain. And the worst example of this, and I have love for the 80s Dune, but just like, all right, here's a 20 minutes of exposition dump to tell you what's going on, and then we're going to start the movie up. Like that's, I like it. It's not remotely interested in explaining any part of any of this. It's just like, think of like an alternate universe James Bond, right? But like also like a rock star. This like he's James Bond, but also David Bowie, and also like all of these other things, and like also Evil Knievel, and like all those things were like one dude. And
Well,
everybody knows him. And
This is the opposite of the. I like that you threw Dune in as like the example of kind of doing the opposite of this, because this movie is kind of opposite Dune, right? Like David Lynch is someone who didn't really care about, understand, or really want to delve into Dune, like the novelization of it. And a lot of people really enjoyed it. And he's like, well, they hired me to do this movie. It's a lot of money. The novels are good or whatever. Let's do this. So he kind of comes to the writing of it, I think, as somebody who is looking at it that way. Like, let me make a movie about Dune for someone like me that doesn't really give a fuck about this at all. And this movie is one guy who seems to understand this entire universe intrinsically, writing a movie where he's like, let's just assume everybody is me, and has written like 5 different scripts of this movie. And let's just throw the audience right into that and just, you know what? They'll be me eventually. By the end of the movie, they'll know what I know.
Yeah, it's just like one long series of cocaine decisions after another, but it makes sense to him, right?
Well, I was gonna say, Buckaroo Banzai to me is like what an 8-year-old would make as a main character. It's like, oh, he's a doctor, but he's also a scientist. But guess what? He's also an inventor, and he's also a rock star.
And he's the world's greatest stunt racer. Okay, sure. Like,
I just assume that's how everybody was in the 80s.
Yeah.
The same way that now everybody's kind of a DJ. Like, you just kind of can assume that everybody's done something and they're a DJ. Like, in this world, everyone's a neuroscientist, and a famous scientist, and a musician, and drives on a motorcycle, and has a band of people that follow him around. That kind of apparently people assume that they're like the village people, and they can just come on like dressed as a cowboy or something, like, because.
Yeah, and I just love too, were you guys able to understand the Penny Pretty?
That sounded a little condescending.
Were we able to understand? Is that really how you coach that question?
No, I wasn't able to understand.
I told you the condescension was going to get worse.
Yeah, but I thought you meant from you.
Oh, that's later.
Yeah, no, like
a
that
condescension fragmentation grenade.
I'll be honest, Penny Pretty took me years to kind of unwrap that whole mystery. But Buckaroo Banzai apparently married the Queen of the
You've been thinking about this movie that much?
Peggy.
Apparently.
Yeah, no,
that's why you're so slow with episode art sometimes. No, I'm kidding.
I'm sitting there thinking about, that's why I haven't done The Arrival yet. I'm thinking about Buckaroo Banzai.
Okay, do we need another Vox explainer about this now? What are we doing?
Just real quick.
Okay. Don't like that. Don't like that description of it.
Buckaroo Banzai was married to the Queen of the Netherlands, who was Peggy.
Right.
And she died. She was killed by the World Crime League. And then she after she died, he went through the mourning process, and Penny is Peggy's identical twin sister.
Yeah.
But they never knew each other. That's it.
Wait. Questions. Why? How did the Queen of the Netherlands? Why was she the identical twin sister of a woman from
New Jersey?
Was it Wyoming?
Yeah, no, they're both born in Wyoming.
But I like how they got very specific about where in Wyoming, and there was a correction, which is like, okay, so that's clearly important to the plot for some reason.
Well, the Laramie was
They both those
famously
cities,
where,
by the way.
I think this came later, but where the Laramie Project was written from. I remember reading that and taking a Theater 101 class.
But does that have anything to do with it, or is that just?
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's because that was like he because remember he said what city that his wife was born in.
Yeah,
and she's like, I was born there too. So like, but
there's multiple cities invoked in Wyoming.
Yes,
wait, there are multiple cities in Wyoming.
But she never became the Queen of the Netherlands.
And so it's pure coincidence that the long lost twin sister of his deceased former wife attempts
Which, by the way, he doesn't tell her that she's deceased either.
Attempts to commit suicide during one of his concerts.
Yeah, mid-song.
That's coincidental.
And stopped by the waitress who actually bumps into her elbow.
Right.
He also acts kind of annoyed that he has to explain this to her, which is just a perfect attitude for this movie, and doesn't tell her that she's deceased. He just says she's gone now, which could mean like, took everything, packed it up and moved out. Or it could mean like she's dead. And he doesn't explain that. He's like, are you happy now? You're adopted. You lived in a different part of the country. Your sister's Queen of the Netherlands. I explained it. You want to just fucking shut the fuck up and just come out of jail now, or like what?
Why don't you go star in Down by Law now? Go ahead.
And so he takes her right to the conference, which is being held in the same room where they're about to have a motorcycle convention.
Is he also the head of the motorcycle convention? Because that would have made sense, as much sense as anything else in this movie.
No, but it explains why the motorcycles are there. Like it's just like everything is just very well thought out.
Yeah, he gets the call from the president.
All right, so this is the watermelon. This is the guy getting annoyed that he has to, that he's been asked about the watermelon so many times. Which, if you're gonna promise to explain the watermelon and not explain the watermelon, it's kind of weird that you're now annoyed that you have to explain it again. But you know what? We'll roll with it, I guess, like everything else we're rolling with tonight, and just play the clip. Jamie, pull this clip up. Just kidding, it's me pulling the clip up.
Why is the watermelon there? Well, I'm asked all the time, and I'm not evasive. I think if you found an interview or two out there on some websites, you'd get the answer, but people don't bump into the answer. They seem to bump into the question more. And when we do the commentary and we're in the scene about the watermelon, I'd be really happy to describe what's going on in there. Here we are sitting in the Banzai Institute, and there's a watermelon behind me. I could ask them why the watermelon, but there are every. Al, could you give me one of those watermelons? Thank you. Okay, why this watermelon? Or why any watermelon? Well, really, look at the DV commentary and you'll get the answer to that. But I could take this a little further, because what's the scene about? It's about New Jersey asking why the watermelon. People have always said, what's the answer? I say, well, what happened in New Jersey got the answer. What did it mean to him? And, well, okay, he absorbed the fact, but then the guy is an epicure. It's little known. New Jersey loves to cook. He's now hanging out at the Institute, and there are watermelons everywhere. And I was sent the other day because I said, I know I'm going to be asked about the watermelon again, something that I could say different about it. And I get this recipe. This is something that it's not clear to me whether New Jersey created this recipe or whether he cut it out from somewhere. But I'll tell you one thing. It's called chicken in a watermelon. And you should put that up somewhere so fans can try it themselves. But it's a favorite here at the Institute. I just was looking at a menu in the cafeteria. The thing is, it's on there every day. It's like, and to me, You Be the Judge is the most disgusting recipe I've ever heard.
Astounding. I like that he's kind of a dick about it. That's great.
He says he's not evasive, and then gives 90 seconds of pure evasion.
Yes.
I also, I don't know. I kind of respect the just the kind of fuck off. Here's a random recipe bit, because I feel like anyone could really do that. Like, you could challenge somebody on why their book is fucking offensive or something. If you're like, all right, fuck off. Here's a family recipe that's been handed down through the ages. Explain it. I don't know. And he also clearly had the other watermelons ready and the recipe. And it's a DVD. It's supposed to be, I think, theatrical, because it's like a DVD extra or whatever. But it's still funny to pretend that you're being evasive, or be evasive, pretend you're not being evasive, have watermelons ready for a bit, and then also have the recipe ready for a bit, and be like, hey, why any watermelon? Really, why are we on this earth? Why is anything really happening? Is there a God? I don't know. But you know what? I have a
You're sitting here asking about watermelons when there's murder in the third world? Yeah.
Across every dimension. It's weird. America still somehow manages to be the first world throughout the entire 8 dimensions. You're asking me about watermelons? Why don't you ask why other dimensions don't have watermelons?
It's a mid 80s movie. Of course, America is the first world power. Yeah.
Also, there's they kind of mention freedom fighters, in the way that we had democratically elected governments overthrowing people during Latin American and Asian and African leaders. They mentioned it in the same way, their original democratically elected leader on the planet was overthrown by a bunch of freedom fighters. And it's kind of funny that they're throwing that dig at Reagan's foreign policy. In this movie, that kind of everything gets thrown at the wall at you at the same time. It's hard to pick that up, but it's pretty apparent, I guess, if you're thinking about how to mention Ronald Reagan in this episode.
Yeah, there's no Space Ollie North that I'm aware of, but yeah, I agree.
I know. Wasn't it the guy who was talking about having fudge in his pants, or?
I've just looked up because I was curious as to what is said on the DVD commentary about the watermelon, and according to this site, according to the Geek Twins site, who say that on the DVD, the director Richter explains that the function of there's the in-universe explanation for what the watermelon experiment is for in the institute or whatever, but then the functional explanation of why the scene was there was they were testing to see whether the studio was watching to check whether anything they did made sense, and they shot the scene with this big logical hole where they never explain it to see whether they would get notes like what's the deal with the watermelon, and because nothing came back from the studio, they realized no one was checking and they could do whatever they wanted.
See, that's an amazing explanation, and I didn't know that, but like I'm totally, you could put anything in the movie and I'm willing to forgive it. You know what I mean? Like
that's if I just may, because I actually have a thing for that. That's like
all right, Jeff Goldblum.
That's like the brown M&M thing, right? The whole Van Halen, like, the brown M&Ms. We gotta have those M&Ms sorted. That was literally to see if someone would read the writer. So that's just like put in something absurd that you can't possibly forget, and then see if somebody's paying attention. And I've seen derivations of that as well, usually with other writers. But that actually that's a surprisingly like logical and practical explanation for a ridiculous bit, frankly.
Another fact to bring in during this part of the conversation is that they're kind of making this during a change in command, I think, of Fox as like as the main company making this movie, or distributing this company or this movie. So kind of the people that they were working with that originally greenlighted it and said like, yeah, like definitely make this movie, we support it, kind of get replaced during the filming by a different group of people which is the reason that they brought Peter Weller in to say like, we don't understand how to market this, because they weren't even the same people that had greenlit it. Which is also how Starship Troopers got made, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, well, and this is the one movie where he's like, just like again, the traditional. We blasted right past it, but the traditional leading man style guy. Like you could easily like swap in like any leading man type of any time period to the Buckaroo Banzai role, and it'd be fine. Because all he's got to do is have like have the swagger and deliver the lines with a certain amount of authority. And you're good. And like nothing against Peter Weller. I like Peter Weller. I mean, I love RoboCop, but let's go ahead and say that's not a traditional leading man role, right? I mean, I adore it. It's great. When he shoots that dude in the dick, it's awesome. But like, like this is like,
but it's also another role that could get played by pretty much anybody, right? Like,
true.
But
this was like the rare, like there was like a minute where it was like, oh, he's going to be the next, like James Dean or Bogart or whatever. And it was just like, but he was in Buckaroo Banzai, and it's one of the weirdest movies of all time that like people just genuinely thought, oh, this is going to be huge. Yeah. You think that? Okay, cool. Have you seen this? You've seen it, right? Okay. All right. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of also, no, go ahead.
Oh, there's just that great moment in the Q&A from the Q&A that you played where I think, Weller or Lithgow was talking about the financiers from the banks coming to the set, and them having to try and justify this colossal use of money to these people from like UBS Bank and Capital One, who've put up all these millions of dollars, and they see just hundreds of people sitting around the set of this thing, and you can imagine considering the sets, and it's a very interesting example of a movie is such a strange thing to spend your capital on, considering what the money actually gets spent on, which is just like making alien heads and and bizarre costumes, and it's quite amusing when he relates this anecdote of trying to justify to the money people what exactly they're doing with all the Buckaroo Banzai money.
And if you're trying to launder money, it's great.
And that's why originally we started a podcast to launder Conan Neutron's drug money. No. But I also think it's really interesting that it seems like the first people that greenlit it at Fox, their tenure was very short, and they were kind of these financial. If I'm getting the timeline correct, like they were kind of these financial people that had all these connections, and they're kind of acting as producers for this too, and they're bringing their friends around to be like, hey, we're doing this tenure at Fox, and then get replaced during this filming. So it's funny to like think of like these financial bros that like I'd assume like their friend, like they're bringing their friends down to be like, hey, look what we're doing now, invest some capital in it, this is our new thing. And then their friends are like, what the fuck is this?
Well, I mean, if it wasn't for people money laundering, we wouldn't have Steven Seagal or Jackie Chan, really. Because they both all of their films were like actually produced by the mafia. Jackie Chan by the Hong Kong mafia, obviously, and Seagal by the U.S. mafia. But it's a great way to launder money. It really is. I just wish fucking Giuliani ruining a good thing. Like, how many more Seagals could we have had if it wasn't for Giuliani cracking down on the mob?
So many Seagals. I admire just getting away from that immediately. I admire the no origin story provided nor expected. Just, hey, here are these guys and they do this stuff, and like let's go see what they're up to. Like, that is kind of refreshing, and it's a very 80s thing, but I feel like it's also very like ahead of its time too. Like, I think it was something like Galaxy Quest or something like that.
Yeah, they also tried it. They did try it in Leonard Part 6.
They tried that already. Yeah.
Horrible movie. Don't watch Leonard Part 6.
My friend Eugene Robinson is in that. He has tails. Let's put it that way.
Okay. But yeah,
get him on Bad Takes.
Yeah, maybe I should do that. Talk Leonard Part 6 with
he'd probably do it. So where I was going with all that was that, like, I think, like, again, that comes back to like the exposition dump. Like, here's the character as like a young person having the traumatic event that led them to blah blah blah. It doesn't care about any of that. It's just like, yeah, do you need to know like what how James Bond became James Bond? Well, of course they have Casino Royale, but like, you don't, right? So like the idea of just like, we're just gonna assume that you're gonna be into this enough that like you're not really going to care about that piece of it, so we can just get to like the 70,000 ideas we have to like sort of shoehorn into this movie. And
I feel this is more like akin to like the Daniel Craig James Bond movies, but not quite as lovingly, much more lovingly put together than any Daniel Craig movie that's not Casino Royale.
Yeah, well, and so like, again, I'm going to come back to the fact that that's unique. Like, most people don't have the audacity to do that, right? Like, and just be like, drop you in like as if the story's already like further along and not spoon feed it to you in any way, shape, or form. Is it successful at doing it? I don't know. I mean, I remember I saw this as a kid, not as young as Andy, but I saw this as a kid with my dad, who just could not stop laughing the whole time. Didn't understand any of the humor, and all I remembered as a kid, I was like, wow, that was a weird movie. Then I watched it as an adult, I'm like, that's a weirder movie than I remember it being. And like, that was a weird movie. And I have a goddamn Eraserhead photo behind me. Like, I love weird movies. Right?
Release the David Lynch cut of Buckaroo Banzai. No, but there's almost like I think it precedes this, but like there's almost like a neoliberalizing of the action hero. As someone who's kind of doing a bunch of stuff at the same time, has like all of these side hustles, you're supposed to assume from it like, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to be just happy with my job. Maybe I'm supposed to be doing all these different jobs, kind of have my hand in all of these different plots. Like at the same time, fan service is all over this movie, right? Like, but it's a fan base that hasn't even been created yet. So it's like kind of a prototype of that style of like, let's reference a bunch of stuff and assume that the people that understand this are going to keep stay there, you know what I mean? Like, and assume that maybe we can actually franchise this. Like at the end of it, they're kind of saying, oh, they'll be back for this, and kind of create it in a space where you're not just assuming that there's going to be one movie. You're assuming there's going to be several movies. It's going to be a franchise. There's all these other opportunities, I think, around that. The hero of it isn't just doing one thing. Like, you could take that in a lot of different directions. And I think the fact that we're kind of in this age, starting at that point of like extreme commerce or like extreme, financialization of things, like kind of plays into that. And this movie kind of precedes that in a lot of ways.
It's not quite related, but just as you were talking, it made me think that there is another connection that I feel to this movie, which is this strategy of just saying, "Oh, Buckaroo Banzai, you know Buckaroo Banzai," and people are like, "Do I know Buckaroo?" Yeah, the famous hero in all the comic books, Buckaroo Banzai. Yeah. You're like, "Oh yeah, I guess yeah, of course, yeah, Buckaroo Banzai, yeah, he's huge, yeah, it's going to be a big franchise, it's massive." The creation, the kind of fake it till you make it quality is one that actually I've deployed successfully myself in my own life through Current Affairs, which is that when we founded Current Affairs, we tried to find a name of a magazine that was a thing that people would feel stupid if they admitted they hadn't heard of. So like,
actually, it's actually really funny like that, because I said Current Affairs, and my mom was like earlier tonight was like, "Oh, that's that used to be a radio show, right? Current Affairs."
Well, yeah, people are like, oh yeah, of course, Current Affairs, because it sounds like a thing that already exists. So
really
if you do that, if you do that, if you just go, oh, the big famous thing that exists, and you do that enough, and you prey on people's insecurity, you can bring into existence the very phenomenon that does not exist but you wish to see exist.
Well, I mean, The Economist has been doing that for like 200 years. They're just like, "Oh, you're not reading our magazine. I guess you don't know what the latest Economist is saying." You don't know The
Economist.
Yeah.
Do the flex you want to see.
I also
I think it's pretty amazing, and I think that's something that's been deployed kind of as an experiment multiple times, right? In the years since this, like there's, you know what I mean? Like people have kind of made up like almost like fake movies that people should have seen, that they kind of have pressured them into being like, "Oh no, yeah, I saw that movie. I remember that." Like it was a movie with was it like Shaq as a genie? People made up, and they so they kind of like did an experiment where they were like, people are like, yeah, I remember.
No, you're thinking Shaq did do a movie as a genie. It was Sinbad.
Sinbad.
You're thinking of.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I think those. So people are like, well, the connection. Yeah. So the connection people were making were like
seems correct, so it becomes true. Right?
Did you ever see my
tweet
Mandela
effect?
About that to Sinbad? I tweeted Sinbad. I said you should just make a Kazam 2 and just make references to this other movie that doesn't exist, and like just keep gaslighting people. And he's just like, I just might do that. I was like, hell yeah.
I think also about like, the Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, like Grindhouse thing, where you had a Planet Terror and the one with the car.
Death Proof.
Death Proof, yeah. And they did all the previews that were from movies that didn't exist.
Yeah.
And they basically had their friends like do these previews for things like, oh yeah, that looks like that would be. And then like one of them I think was Machete, right? And then they end up making not one, but multiple Machete movies.
Amazing movies, by the way. Like fucking amazing Machete movies.
2 was a multiple, Andy. So yes, 2. Thank you for the correction. Really? We regret the error.
But I also think that that's something that's been deployed in satire really well. Like, I mean, we talked about Spaceballs already, I guess technically this week, but when we did Alien, but like, Spaceballs did it really well with making fun of the merchandising when Mel Brooks like merchandising, and then they did Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money. Like but this movie kind of does that without any I mean, Spaceballs did too, but like you're kind of realizing, all right, they're parodying Star Wars and how much that's been merchandised by our friend Bonnie Burt. No, I'm kidding. Like how much that's been merchandised in the decades. Well, in that case, I guess it was over a decade since it came out, and they're making fun of that. This movie kind of seems to do that intrinsically without actually having you needing to be tethered to this franchise. They're like, this is going to be a franchise, and by the end of it, you're like, was this a franchise? Like, did I miss the franchise? Is this something that I should have known about the whole time? Like, is Buckaroo? Are there other movies? Like, am I missing something?
Yeah. Oh, I've only seen the Ninth Dimension. Like, I've got to watch the other ones. Okay.
Where is this World Crime League one? Well, apparently those scripts that are lost to time too. Like they were all Buckaroo versus the World Crime League except for this one. So
there's also a, and I guess I'll bring this in, talking about Earl McRush, like the writer. I have a clip from that Q&A where they're talking about, at one point they talk about the fact that like I don't remember if it was a fire. There's something that with his like truck, and he lost a bunch of the scripts that he had written, and he's like, oh, don't worry, they're all in my head, which makes a lot of sense. That like he has all these ideas and he's been thinking about this, and was going to be a TV show at one point. Like there were all these different conceptions of what this could possibly be. So it's this one guy kind of thinking through a franchise, and then eventually it's like one part of the franchise gets greenlit, and he's like, all right, well, I'll do that. So I as someone that's like very creative, I think, and like I remember as a kid like inventing like, because I didn't, I invented like random characters that I liked, like not have, because my parents didn't have like cable or anything, so like, so I invented characters I liked or something, and like I can imagine being an adult and being like, oh, I'm going to bring these characters into something and pitch something with them.
One of them's going to be named J. Andrew World. Another one's going to be named Conan Neutron. And
I imagined all of this, right? But there's a
imagine it now. Can you imagine me a better life if this is what you imagine?
Why the fuck have you imagined me in this fucking reality? Imagine me differently. No, but so I can imagine being someone incredibly creative who hasn't been discovered yet, having like years and years of, because they said that they started planning this movie in college, or this character in college, and this is like, over a decade later, like having thought of all these ideas and being like, I'm going to include these ideas, and these are the ones that are best suited for this franchise, and then maybe there'll be more of these movies later, and I can explain things differently, and then there aren't. You know what I mean? Like.
I mean, there are comic book series. Let's we do have it has lived on in comics. The original like adaptation was done by Mark Texiera, who I actually met at a party with Kevin Smith back in 1999.
Oh, did you say Kevin Smith? Hey,
speaking of Kevin Smith.
Oh yeah, speaking of Kevin Smith, mute the mics.
How do you pronounce the writer's name? I've never known how to say it. I've said
Earl Mac Rauch.
Earl Mac Rauch. And what did you guys call him? Earl Mac Rauch?
Mac, actually, yeah.
This, I've read a lot about him on the internet as much as I could find and whatnot. This was a dude who was working on several different scripts for several different Buckaroo Banzai. First, it was Buckaroo Bandy, and then I think it was, what's his name? W.D. Richter. What did you guys call him? Rick. He was the one that suggested call it Buckaroo Banzai. And then it kind of, they started building a Western theme around it. He wrote, according to what I read, several different screenplays, started a bunch and wouldn't finish any of them, would start and then let it just stop. And he kept expanding a universe that nobody knew about, which I always loved. Like when I remember seeing this movie on video and going out and searching for the novelization because I saw it listed somewhere. And the novel, that I guess he had written himself, was so dense and so packed and filled in so many questions that anybody that loved the movie might not have like known about, and also whetted your appetite for shit like Hanawai Jan is coming next, the guy that killed Peggy and stuff like that. And then it never fucking came. But it was I remember being entranced by the story because it doesn't go any place you want it to. It won't conform at all. Was he around? Was the writer around on set the whole time?
Yeah. And going back to that lunch, when they persuaded me to do it, they were full of all these other stories. They had clearly created this extremely complicated backstory and things that were going to happen. My impression, I don't know whether I'm right or not, but I think they were Dartmouth roommates or something. I
remember reading that as well.
And that they used to just kind of riff on Buckaroo Banzai stories.
The story that I read online was one of them, WD had read a book that Earl McRouch had written, and he liked it, and he saw he was from Dartmouth, and he reached out to him. He was like, hey man, I'm from Dartmouth too. And Dartmouth, sorry. I'm the guy before it was like Lithgow. Lithgow. So he reached out to him, they became friends, and then they started talking about screenwriting, and they started talking about the creation of this character, and it went on for years. Until I guess WD had taken off or gotten a career in the business, and then he said, "Come on out." And they started working on this slowly.
I think he wrote New York.
Yeah.
Scorsese movie.
Screenplay of that.
Earl or Rick?
Earl, yeah. It was really a mind like a trap, man. He was a genius head. I had a couple of lunches with him, and he was around. But he had engineering stuff, and he had done an entire tour of the Bible Belt tent revivals for 2 summers and was taking notes on writing a comedy about Bible Belt tent revivals. It's just astounding guy.
It's awesome. Yeah, that dude wrote that. Remember that Scorsese movie nobody remembers that like is a saxophone player and like.
Well, I don't want to sound stupid, so yeah, I totally remember.
Yeah, remember when that happened? See, I'm just doing the same trick we talked about, right? Well, yeah, everyone remembers the saxophone Scorsese movie, of course. Yeah. What?
Robert De Niro played the saxophone.
But like, no, that I mean, I think that is kind of it's called New York, if I remember right. But yeah, like it's like, I mean, it's like like it's an eminently forgettable movie even for Scorsese. But it's like, yeah, that dude wrote that, and like he ended up writing this, a couple years later. It's like, okay.
But apparently, had been writing it for like a decade, which is insane. But it kind of also, I feel like he's into Nathan's point that he made, where it's like you can kind of fake your way into like, everybody knows Buckaroo Banzai, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I must. Like it's also the thing about like
Sounds
doing
familiar.
the Elon Musk thing, where you kind of have a bunch of ideas that aren't really in fruition. You just kind of pitch them to people, and you're like, I have all these ideas. I'm a genius, and they're like, well, he has all these ideas, and they sound like they're good ideas. I guess that guy's a genius. And it kind of, in some ways, almost sounds like, Earl Mac Ray or whatever. Like he kind of almost like made it seem like that. You know what I mean? Like they're still like, well, listen, because there's a part later on in the Q&A where they're like, it was that part, but then later on they explain it more. Like it felt like he was such a genius that I wanted to be in this movie after not understanding it. And it's like almost like gaslighting someone into being like, well, there must be something something I'm missing because. And this guy's a genius, and there must be something that I'm not getting, and I should be in this movie because it's going to take off.
That's what happened with Pete Buttigieg. Like people saw.
By the way, I have to talk. I mean, when we do Stab a Cipher tomorrow, Gab and Kitty did their first episode on the Mayor Pete documentary, aka the Mayo Pete documentary, and I had to watch 10 minutes of it, and I feel like I threw up a bunch of times. I watched 10 minutes, and I was like, no, I am not clipping this for Kenzo. No.
So anyway, Earl Mac Roche, genius, fraud. Charlie, what do you think?
So I got to be critical now. All right. Well,
you have an hour to think about it, so it better be fucking good.
An hour. I've had an hour to think. Well, I've been thinking about other things, but no. Anyway, I don't know. Genius or fraud? Usually you require a little bit of both. So I'd say both. As they say, shit has its own integrity. Anyway, when I first was watching this, the first thing I thought of, I was like, this could be an anime. In fact, I thought it should be an anime.
You should go back to the 1980s and tell them they should make an anime.
Goddamn right. I'll go back.
Of course, the term would have been Japanimation back then.
Yeah, there you go. See,
can't say that anymore.
Movie night extravaganza canceled.
I would swear to God, if we got canceled for that, I'd be so pissed. I mean, so many other jokes.
Damn it, Andy.
I mean,
trash.
You're wearing it. I was gonna say, Andy, you're wearing a tie. Be professional. No,
I made a joke on Twitter last night where Medea went back in time and burned down the Reichstag, and I did not get canceled for making that joke. Because someone had tweeted like the Feminista Jones tweet from a while back where it was like, oh, Hitler was actually going after black women, and it wasn't actually the Jews. So I made Tyler Perry's Medea burns down the Reichstag, and I did not get canceled for that joke. If I get canceled for Andy saying Japanimation, I'm going to be pissed.
I mean, that's just what was called back, like that was just the name of it. It's like referring to something really offensive in history,
And Andy just really doesn't
like
want me to be
Negro
critical
League
of the movie.
baseball.
He just
we're
just
getting
saying
canceled.
Yeah. Can we let Charlie finish a thought? Do you think that might be
I
possible?
was gonna say, shut up. No. Anyway.
Yeah, Nathan, that's enough out of you, man.
Yeah. Maybe I need the gavel. Jesus Christ. No, I was gonna say that's my first thought was, this should be an anime. So if anybody decides to reboot it, do that, please. I feel like because this is my perspective, but I feel like the movie doesn't fit the idea doesn't fit the medium, if that makes sense. Because not only was I
fit the message.
Jesus, no.
I
said what I meant.
I wanted to make a Marshall McLuhan reference and sound smart.
I know. Well, There are other ways to sound smart, Forrest.
Just because you watched one movie with him in it, and we all know what movie that is.
We can't
God.
say his name because we're 99% of the way into getting canceled as it is. But
yes, but basically, so that was my first thought, and then I thought, you know, the idea didn't quite fit the medium. That's where that idea of the anime came from. But so as I was watching it, one of the thoughts I had about Banzai and his group is it almost seemed like that they were I don't want to say idealistic, but they were a mirror to the American national security state, in my opinion. They've got the ability to track people. They have the irregulars who they can call on at any time. They're running around with guns, doing whatever they want. You know, they've got science to back them up. It's basically the national security state, but with heroes. And since you mentioned Ronald Reagan, I'm obligated. Gore Vidal, that was, you know, his talking point, the national security state. But that's one of the things I thought of, which I thought was interesting, given it was in the 80s and stuff. But you know, you could almost watch the movie as though Buckaroo Banzai is like this shadow government within the United States of America, doing the things that are, you know, the things that people want, but you know, they just do it in a very cool manner, you know, and they also play, you know, music. The only other thought I had, because I'm a nerd, is that this seemed kind of proto meta modern, and I'll explain that. First off, metamodernism, as far as politics and philosophy is concerned, is stupid. Don't read about it. It's ridiculous. Never. But as a literary movement, or a movement for different mediums, it's kind of interesting because it
sounds like my same reading of postmodernism as a concept.
Pretty much, yeah. You know, with postmodernism, don't go to the philosophy. Don't listen to Jordan Peterson. It's not that big a deal. With metamodernism, basically what it does is it oscillates between modernism and postmodernism within the literary frame, and in this case, in a cinematic manner. Where, for me, it seems like Buckaroo Banzai kind of oscillates between some kind of irony and some kind of sincerity. Where, you know, for example, the scene where is it Penny, right?
Penny.
Yeah, okay. When she's there and she's, you know, gonna kill herself and stuff, you know, the crowd is jeering at her, and then it's kind of offset by Buckaroo Banzai being like, hey, you know, basically, let's be nice to her. You know, he's sincere about it. He wants her to,
which is like the famous line from the movie: "No matter where you go, there you are."
Yeah, and
also, as an aside, I'd just like to point out that he senses that somebody in the audience isn't having a good time.
Right, exactly.
Which
you're too stupid to have a good time.
Which Conan always, you know, it's a natural thing frontmen have.
Yeah.
You know, the only show I ever saw of Conan, somebody doesn't have a good time.
That's why
I've been tracking this, by the way, from Rocky Horror Picture Show, saying it's not easy having a good time, to Patrick Swayze saying you're too stupid to have a good time. This movie saying, you know what I mean? There's someone out there that's not having a good time. Yeah. It's really just a thread,
right? And
it's a running thread. Yeah,
right.
I was going to say War of the Worlds, 1937.
That's why he's such a good asset, you know, as a shadow government, because he can just sense when somebody's not having a good time. He's like, "Oh, you're not having a good time." Interrogation? No.
Continue the coup. Let's
coup intensified. Just like stop the coup. Somebody's not having a good time. Everybody focuses on one person.
That was one of the plots against Castro, right? They're just to make everyone have
pretty
such
much
a good time that no one cared that the U.S. state just came in and removed Castro.
Castro's having such a great time, they just carry him away. So, but from the meta-modern perspective, there's a definite oscillation throughout the movie between kind of a irony and a sincerity that I found was interesting. It's not overly pronounced, which is why I said proto metamodern, but I found it kind of interesting to look at and see how that goes about. And in the middle of this oscillation, you have Jeff Goldblum, stating the obvious, which was appreciated by me as I was lost the entire time. So, those are the main thoughts I had. It should have been an anime. Buckaroo Banzai is a heroic mirror to the national security state. And the only difference is that, they kind of set up the U.S. government as incompetent, whereas he's heroic and he knows what he's talking about because apparently nobody else knows what's going on. And
it kind of, that thought of it, right? Like as something that's kind of hovering between sincerity and irony, that's trying to make a statement about that, is kind of preceding Verhoeven's work. Between RoboCop, Starship Troopers, like, those movies throughout the 80s, where we've talked about this extensively, I think at this point, but like you can't really you can't really mock the U.S. government during the Reagan administration. You can't really you can't really point out the overt privatization in pop culture. So you kind of have to hide it behind different things, where it's kind of like an absurdist or an ironic or something like that to kind of get people to start thinking about it, because pushing it down people's throat, then Reagan will just show up on stage with an American flag and everyone will start cheering and be like, like, you know what I mean? It's like
it'd be like the end of Bob Roberts. Basically, it just comes on stage.
So it is kind of interesting that way. And I felt, the fact that multiple actors in this movie ended up in Verhoeven movies later on, really kind of pushed that in for me. And I know that that's not what they were going for, because Verhoeven hadn't made those movies yet. But it's like, it's interesting that it's kind of like scoping out which actors are game to make those statements, and continuing to put them into movies that are actually, I think, in a much more direct way making those statements.
Right. And to give context kind of in a cinematic manner to what metamodernism is, at the moment, it's mostly associated with Shia LaBeouf, which...
sorry. I'm muted, right?
But a lot of the metamodern directors now who are doing this are people like Wes Anderson and I don't know, Charlie Kaufman. And for TV shows, it'd be Dan Harmon, specifically when he did Community. That's kind of the metamodern, to kind of give this context. But that's kind of
what... Wes Anderson was directly inspired by this movie for The Life Aquatic. Like when they're all walking out, and I have to find it, so it's not going to be up immediately. But there's a Jeff Goldblum clip where he's talking about how during the work up to, because nobody's really directly asked Jeff Goldblum about this movie. They asked him about all the other movies pretty much he's been in, and he has but like I guess he got asked, and I found this clip that's on it's on Unlisted for Nerdist, where he explains that the Wes Anderson told him like, oh, I really liked Buckaroo Banzai and I liked that last scene where they're all walking. Why don't we do that for The Life Aquatic?
Yeah, it is an incredible scene. Like it's like one of the best, credit scenes I think I can think of. Like that, like there's just the theme song playing and they're like just walking in the aqueduct, and it's great.
Which Jeff Goldblum was playing on the piano whenever they're all hanging out in the
theme, the love theme to Buckaroo Banzai. So capping Charlie's points, I think that's interesting because I don't feel like this is an ironic movie in any way, shape, or form. I think it actually is if anything, like slightly farcical, but shockingly earnest for such an absurdist affair. Well, really shockingly earnest.
Maybe irony is not the right word. Maybe it's a oscillation between humor and sincerity. It's just metamodernism is built as oscillation between irony and sincerity. But maybe
I totally get the point. But I just think that's right. I was trying to define why was it funny to me, but like also like, oh, this is a fun thing to watch. Like I don't have to think too hard about it too, because like it's like you're never gonna take in all the points, so why would you bother thinking about it like that hard? But I don't know. But then I'm also interested, Nathan. What do you think about that? Did you feel like it was a fun movie? I mean, did you think that this?
Yeah, I had tons of fun. How could you not have fun?
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty.
It's everything you could possibly want, as Kevin Smith pointed out. You can't really what do you want out of a film that you don't get out of this film?
Yeah. Like,
what are you
like,
asking for?
I think there are some of my favorite movies are like, look, is this like the pinnacle of filmmaking? Not really, but is it loads of fun? Hell yeah, it is. And there's something to be said for that, right? Like, there's something to be said for that.
Yeah,
the clip ready, Forrest, or what? What's going on? But no, seriously,
I'm waiting for the clip to load up, so that's why I had myself on mute.
But I mean, so do you think so? So Charlie just dropped a whole like sub show worth of commentary and thoughts on this, as a writer is known to do. How do you feel about that, Nathan? And to be for plenty from you, so I'm not going to ask you.
Oh, that's fine.
But like, how do you feel about that like whole shadow government like mindset and like all
Well, and I mean, isn't that common in a lot of? I mean, I don't know that it's that different from a lot of superhero films that have the sort of. Where you analyze them for a second and it turns out they're all fascist vigilantes, who are doing the bidding of U.S. empire. Certainly, you do get the distinct impression that if Noam Chomsky would have one look at the actual actions of Buckaroo Banzai, and would see him as just another branch of the imperial state. Yeah, I would like more Buckaroo Banzai films because it's very easy to assume that the story we're given about who's right among the aliens is true. But I'd like more context on Lord John Warfin or whatever it is. You know, he's presented as a fascist enemy, but as we know, the United States presents all of its enemies as.
Well, thank God that Glenn Greenwald's written an entire book on Lord John Warfin. No, listen.
Wait, he did? I missed it? What?
There's explicit like apartheid references in some ways too, like throughout this. I felt like with, you know what I mean, like having kind of the race of aliens, or the branch or subset of aliens that have just kind of looked at Jamaica as a place and show up, and they're all kind of Jamaicans, and then other aliens that are like, oh, well, these are the black Lactoids and these are the red, like, you know what I mean, like there's kind of feels like in some ways like there's a group of people who have kind of been freedom fighters, overthrown a democratically elected government in their terminology that they had, and now they're in charge, but you don't get any other context besides that. And it feels like explicitly there's a lot there are a lot of questions when it's like, because the implicit thing is they overthrew our government, we don't like that, and if you don't help us, we're gonna just destroy Earth. When you know what I mean, like when he gets a message, it's like there are quite a few questions that I have from that, especially as someone on Earth. But that goes without saying.
You're on Earth.
There's something to be said. Is that an analog for American foreign policy too? Right? Help or else.
Right.
Do the right thing.
Well, I also thought it was kind of interesting that at least at first the aliens were dressed in suits and ties, as opposed to Buckaroo Banzai and his group, which seem not to be in suits,
which are dressed in cowboy garb with the
Huey Lewis and the too.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, I still appreciate that he was there stating the obvious part of the time, but I just thought it was interesting that they had the suit and tie for the aliens. I don't know. I don't want to say that there was a sort of a symbolic attempt to show class or something, where it's people in suits and ties against people who don't wear those. I don't think so.
It's snobs versus slobs, which is like a big 80s theme. I mean, look at like Caddyshack, look at like all these other genre movies of the time. It's snobs versus slobs. And ultimately that is like a class reductionism, sure. And like, by the way, I'm probably the least qualified person in this panel to talk about this shit, but it's 100% true that like it's a class reduction thing, because it's like, okay, well, why is someone a snob? Well, they had all this money to have an elite education where they decided that they're the ones that are like above the labor and so on. Like it's emblematic of like a lot of films at the time that it doesn't get too deep about it, but it's there. I mean, like Trading Places, right? Which is
it's kind of an aesthetic. It's kind of an aesthetic to the movie. It seems.
And you could also say that everything is there because there are just so many ideas.
There's just so much freaking going on.
Right? Yeah, pretty much. I was gonna say
stop for a macro second.
I was gonna say it's like someone gave Nietzsche Adderall and said, "Hey, don't finish any of your ideas, but just throw them all in there and hope for the best."
Usually I take my. I mean, I'm on. You know, as I've said on this podcast, prescribed Adderall. Usually I take Adderall, understand 80s movies a lot better, and then go, you know what? I actually get what was going on in this movie. In this case,
I spotted all the ideas in this movie. I can tell you which one they are.
Orson Welles, War of the Worlds, 19.
Connect the dots, sheeple. Connect the dots.
But
I will say though, if there was ever a war between the snobs and the slobs, I'd be on the side of the snobs. I can't help it.
Yeah. Slob life.
All right, you fucking William F. Buckley motherfucker.
God, it hurts.
So I'm gonna play this Jeff Goldblum clip and then go to final thoughts. Well, first the letterbox reviews and then final thoughts, I guess, to wind this down, because I feel like this conversation could go forever, and I've been trying to keep these down to less than 2 hours because I feel like that's the most viewed version of this show. All right, so this is CIA asset Jeff Goldblum.
Full disclosure, I like it. Yeah.
But I was happy to see that when I worked with the very brilliant Wes Anderson and did Life Aquatic, and then came to that end sequence where we did the end credit sequence where we parade. He said, you know, this is kind of I think people have surmised that it was an homage and he was impacted by it. But I think he told me, unless I'm misremembering it, unless I dreamed this, he said, you know, I did like that we're sort of doing what you did in Buckaroo Banzai. At the end, you know, everybody parades, the characters come together and do an end credit parade to music. So we did that in Life Aquatic too. How about that?
By the way, Jonathan Banks in this film as the hospital administrator dude, like Jonathan Banks of Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad.
Yeah, Mike Ehrmantraut, and looks a lot like
he was young once, as it turns out, but still looks cranky. It's great.
That's why he looked at them and he said, Walt. He's my favorite character in both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Like, he just hands down, just any storyline he's in where he just talks slowly, I'm like, I'm sold. This is 100%. I'm into this.
Here's my list, right? Him, Al Swearingen from Deadwood, and Omar from The Wire. That's my team.
R.I.P. So, Omar from The Wire recently. That's ridiculously sad. Yeah, and it feels like another. I mean, we talked about kind of pandemic. Like the pandemic kind of being a place where people kind of have mental health issues and drug issues and everything else that aren't really addressed. And it feels like that's kind of a realization that people that have been going through recovery that are on the level, like even people that are going through recovery that are in that have been in several really, really good TV shows kind of go through that same struggle.
Yeah, and he also in The Wire was helping one of his co-stars go through it because she was she played the girl who came in towards the end of the show who was like one of the drug dealers. She in real life she was like in and out of prison because
what the fuck, she's fucking terrifying, right?
She's like 5 foot nothing, and like
Marlo's the girl that works right under Marlo.
And like she worked as his protege for a while, and he was trying to get her cleaned up so she could have more roles, and she was phenomenal in The Wire.
She scared the shit out of me in The Wire. Like, that character is terrifying in like a real life kind of way, and it feels like, you know what I mean, like in The Wire, like a lot of characters that are higher up in, I think, different different organizations feel like they're kind of, kind of jockeying for power. Oh, Snoop, that was her name.
Snoop, yes.
Snoop, yeah. So she felt like real to the point of being like a insane sociopath.
I mean, that was her character, her in real life.
Yeah.
But like she was actually trying to like get past this and because she just was at that moment done with going in and out of prison, and it was Conan's guy there whose name is completely Michael K. Williams. Yes.
Oh, I was gonna say, are you saying
Michael Kenneth Williams?
Are you saying Conan's been working for Marlowe this whole time?
Yeah, exactly.
No, Michael K. Williams, who plays basically her enemy on the show.
Yeah.
Like in real life, was like taking her under his wings and trying to get her out of the situation she was in.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And like, he still had his own issues that he couldn't quite overcome. So
no, 100%. And he's been in like a lot. I mean, I even remember he was in Trapped in the Closet, the R. Kelly like thing where they did
his star turn, really.
No, but
come on, it was that MC Hammer backup dancer was a star turn.
But he's been in Boardwalk Empire is fucking pretty amazing, and he was amazing in that too. Like he was an actor that really like was great at the craft, and it's like it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking for anyone to lose their life to addiction, but it's like it's when someone is that talented and you realize like they must have kind of had a moment where they were going through this insanely hard time and lost to it. It's like I feel like is because the outpouring of love that guy received from everywhere. He was a democratic socialist, kind of like he's been on multiple left shows and actually had been talking about different ideas that like we espouse, like what I mean. Like I didn't know any of that about him.
He complimented my artwork once.
Did he?
Yeah, I drew him.
It just felt like it was someone who kind of had this innate understanding of human nature as someone that had gone through all this stuff, and you don't really. I mean, you do get that from Omar on The Wire, but like. I wish I knew more about his life when, besides just watching the shows that he was on. But we do this thing called one sentence letterbox reviews.
We should also say before we get into it, just since we're kind of down here,
if
anybody who's watching does need to reach out to like my DMs are open. Seriously, like reach out if you feel if you feel like you need just to talk.
And he is perfect, so he will answer.
Yes.
All right, so we do this thing, one sentence letterbox reviews. We go on Letterboxd, which Nathan, I don't know if you've been on Letterboxd before, but it's a movie reviewing app that kind of democratizes, as Conan likes to say, like film reviewing,
democracy, baby. Yeah,
where people can kind of give reviews of whatever they watch, decide whether it's good or not, and it operates kind of like a social media app. Where everyone's kind of viewing. I mean, it does, where you kind of have a news feed and you can see what everyone else has been watching and really get an understanding for how people in general feel and not just film reviewers. So Conan finds film reviews.
Just like a boss, taking all the credit.
So you guys better not fucking try to unionize, by the way. Someone said unionize all workplaces on Twitter earlier, and I was like, not the two of you, not because I don't have any money or pay anybody.
But like poignant, funny, evocative, clever, just like not folks that are like known movie reviewers, but just people, just folks that are. It strikes the fancy. It's funny. It's terse. Unlike me, I'm very not terse on Letterboxd. I'm a long form man in a short form world. But anyway, that's the bit.
Sometimes I do two of them, and I try to do one that's like witty, and then I try to do one that's like real. But I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm doing overkill.
So is there any difference between the two?
No.
Anyway, Forrest is on as the show as Movie Night Extravaganza. You can follow him. I'm on as well.
Once again, just like a boss, taking the full.
As is Andy, and I like it because it's a collaborative, and you get the kinds of opinions and thoughts you get. Like it's just not what you would get from regular media. So I think it's an interesting site, and probably one of the only social media sites I frankly like. Because of that, and these are the ones that I think were funny or interesting or whatever for this particular movie. This is the exact number of dimensions I like in my movies. That's Parker. Is there someone out there not having a good time?
This one's so funny though. After talking through like how many movies that we've watched for the show and in general that like kind of have a good time as like a line, you know what I mean? Like this movie feels like right in the middle of it.
It's an empathy thing though, ultimately. And is it weird? Yeah. Is that not how shows work? Definitely. But you know, I appreciate the thought towards having that be a significant part of the script as much as it's
it's kind of it's the proto vibe check. It is like let's see this room vibe check.
Yeah. The intergalactic anti-racist struggle against fascist imperialists is the only fight that's ever mattered.
And you see that across Star Wars. You see that across a whole bunch of different you know what I mean, like different space movies, which is interesting that it kind of gets put into the science fiction genre, like, you know, specifically because I mean, like Star Wars as a movie kind of taking place during these decades kind of has imperialist fascists as the core villains, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, does it?
Yeah.
I didn't notice.
I don't know, that's what Bonnie told me.
A fun trip with the most famous and loved band of surgeon, scientists, crime stoppers who save Earth from an alien race of Johns.
different race of Johns than what Kamala Harris was proposing, I think.
No. Don't be mean. We don't have to be mean. Because remember, no matter where you go, there you are.
I do really like the beginning of the trailer where they're like philosopher.
Exactly. The existence of this film was a celebration of life. I agree with that statement.
Yeah.
John Big Boutte.
You got a big boutte, so I call her Jumpy Boutte. 2 Chainz has the.
Every movie's end credit should feature the main characters strutting down the LA River. Raymond Maines Bridge. Obviously, Wes Anderson agrees, but I agree. I think that's a killer way to end the movie. Actually,
how else would Wes Anderson end a movie? He's got a bunch of various white guys traveling down the LA River. Like,
I got a bone to pick with Tubi, actually, which is what I don't even want to give them the plug. They rewatched this on recently because it does the thing where
no shout outs. No shout
outs. Terrible service. The thing with Tubi is that like it does the thing where it wants you to watch something else immediately and not watch even like 1 second of the credits. And I'm like, yo, fuck that. That's like one of the coolest things about this movie. And I was like just frantically trying to get to the remote to tell it to stop doing that. Anyway,
see, that's why I watched it on Canopy, which you can access with your library card. So there you go.
Fun isn't hard when you have a library card. No. I would like to point out also in the graphic that I decided to go with, whatever state of mind I was in, it's Jonathan Banks getting shoved up against the wall, which is really funny that throughout Breaking Bad it seems like he's almost invincible. You know what I mean? Like besides, I mean, not to bullets, but to everything else throughout that movie, he's kind of even at like 70 or 80 years old, like able to just beat the shit out of people. And it's kind of funny that John Lithgow just throws him against the wall in that context.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish it were possible to high five a movie. Joe Rogan.
Hell yeah, bro.
Goddamn right.
Dudes rock.
I don't care what you think about me. The shit bangs. Wound Warrior 420 is that user's name, by the way.
Wound Warrior.
This movie has everything, including my heart.
I like
Tiffany
that one.
Pace. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you ask people for movie ideas and then use all of them in one movie. Fluffy bro for that one.
Whoa, fuck.
But yeah, so our
Letterboxd, place for film. Follow Movie Night Extravaganza on Letterboxd. Follow me, Conan Neutron. Follow Andy World.
And Nathan's new current affairs letterbox that he's been creating in the background.
Do you have one? I mean, Nando's on there. What the other, I disagree with him on everything.
This is the first film I've watched in like 6 months. I don't
really. Wow. Condolulations. I don't know. How do you? What,
Just so thanks.
It's condolences plus congratulations.
Congratulations.
I was gonna say, you just offered him a high five and you take it away.
Yeah, exactly.
Say psych.
It's like the one film you want to come back to, right? It's something this dense.
Well,
it's
Schrodinger's that was what was nice about having it be the one movie for a long time. Is I feel like I got everything. That
You got all the movies.
All the movies in a movie. I don't need
any more movies. I've seen them all.
If you can only watch one movie, watch this.
Watch one that has all the ideas.
I mean,
and you'll never need to watch another movie again.
Yeah. I will say,
I'm announcing that this podcast is ending after this.
Oh my god!
All out.
I was gonna say I don't want to burst your bubble though. I'm never gonna go back to this movie again though. That's okay. One time's enough.
I was gonna say, congratulations is what you say to like a rich socialite who makes it to the end, still married to like a billionaire, and he dies, and you're like, congratulations. You're rich and he's dead. Anyway, I've been watching Succession. That's been like my thing for the last couple of weeks. So it's been a fun time doing that.
Oh, really? You don't say.
Yeah. I haven't posted about it at all.
I feel like it's something I shouldn't like, but I quite like it. Like, I feel like there's all these reasons why I shouldn't care for it for some reason, but it's a very well done show. I like it.
Shouldn't care for it because it's Dasha from Red Scare, unless she decides to come on this podcast, and then in which case you should love it because it's Dasha from Red Scare. All right. Well, starting with Nathan. Final thoughts. Kenzo, I swear to God, tomorrow if you steal this bit, I'm gonna murder you. Just kidding. I work on that show too. No, Kenzo has a thing now where he does this, but then kind of changes the wording because he looks over at me.
Yeah, just enough to avoid litigation. Exactly.
Yeah.
Notoriously litigious podcast left. Yeah. But
He just pulls out his thesaurus. He's like, okay, different words.
All right, Nathan. Final thoughts, ideas. The current affairs of this movie.
Yeah, I don't know why you made me watch this, but I'm very glad you did.
Andy, not me.
I will take it.
I had a fantastic time.
Well, actually, I host this podcast.
Both watching it and here with you.
Is that you don't have anything else to add?
What do you want? Do you want like a theory of the film? Like I feel like this is not a film that actually I was worried coming on here. I was like, I'm not sure this film is like very susceptible to like analysis. we did some, but
other than how it was made, which is
it resists.
Yeah,
my miracle, really.
It resists theory the way it resists genre.
You could describe this film for 10 hours, but to analyze this film, I'm not sure.
And then he walks out, and I don't really get the reference, but
2 hours later, and he's still in the first 10 minutes.
There was a watermelon, obviously a reference to Fidel Castro.
Which, by the way, someone put up a picture of Castro, like the Cuban forces, all kind of posing in a very similar way to the end of Buckaroo Banzai when they're walking together. Like it was a similar picture today, and it just happened to be posted by like a socialist picture Twitter account. So I put the two pictures next to each other and tweeted it out.
Fantastic.
Oh no,
solid
secret.
Anyway, Charlie, let's hear some thoughts.
Hear some thoughts.
Let's think.
I believe when you. I believe when you speak thoughts, they become words.
Let's see some thoughts.
See some thoughts.
Show us the thoughts.
Listen, it's not too late to kick you right off this fucking show, man. We'll do it.
Oh, really? It's not? Okay. Well, in that case, go off on a rant. No. Final thoughts.
We already did Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, does this mean that we're going to review Big Trouble in Little China? My friend, use YouTube and look it up.
Yes, it's in the archives. It's pretty good, if I do say so myself.
Well, final thoughts. This was a wonderful movie about a shadow government that learns about the power of friendship along the way, and comes together, share with the shared love of watermelon, and saves America once again.
once
That's
again, and you guys have all seen the multiple other times they've saved America. It's been
Obviously.
pretty impressive.
This
And
is
if
like the fourth
know,
time.
Conan, let's hear it.
Again, this is a uniquely strange, weird, and wonderful movie that pretty much completely defies description in every way, shape, and form. Is it eminently watchable? You bet. Would you have to pay me money to attempt to describe it to somebody? You bet.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, I know you are. I think that, is Peter Weller as Buckaroo Banzai a Mary Sue? Yeah, probably. Probably. But does it work? Hell yeah, it does. And like the fact that you got this whole cast of characters as the Hong Kong Cavaliers that just you're just expected to be like, here's some awesome dudes doing awesome dude stuff. Great. That sounds lovely. Thank you for that.
Which has kind of aged well because I think you kind of get the role out of different like pop bands or like, you know what I mean, like groups of like different like almost like YouTube groups that haven't done anything, and you're like, oh, this is the blah blah blah, and you're like expected to just know who that is, and like it's
like when the Strokes came out, and you're like, I don't know who these fucking assholes are. What are you talking about? And like, oh, it's fine, whatever. But
you're like, well,
maybe that was just me. I don't know.
Everybody else but it's funny that it precedes social media, right? Because a lot of social media for me, it feels like when I decide to watch a show or watch like something, sometimes it's based on the recommendations of other people, and it feels like this movie is kind of performing that function for you. Like you don't know, the Hong Kong Cavaliers. Like you really don't. Like,
hello.
What the hell, man?
You don't have their first 7 records? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like kind of whispering that in your ear, and you're like, well, I guess I should.
Well, I guess one person who'd hate this movie is probably Theodore Adorno. It's just straight culture industry.
Also, Hong Kong Cavaliers sounds like another CIA asset.
Oh, I know.
All right, anyway, back to my final thoughts. I also appreciate that the musicians actually are playing, although Peter Weller especially has one of the weirdest 80s guitar tones I've ever heard. And that's only for the other people that care about those kinds of things. But like, it's not exactly cocaine decisions as for the band, other than the fact that there's multiple horn sections. Like there's multiple dudes playing horns in that band, which is, I guess, era appropriate. I think that this movie is a movie that, on the face of it, is there to be enjoyed, not analyzed. Which is why I think when this was originally suggested, I believe my reaction was wow, and I stand by that reaction because I love this movie, but it's a lot. This movie is a lot, and I wish there were 15 more of them because, like, I feel it deserves it. It deserves it more than even things that are like weird or like adorable or whatever people call it. Have a life of their own, and I think that if it was one click better, and I like it a lot, but if it was one click better, it would be something that like has defined culture for a generation. And that's crazy because it is.
I guess two things to bring up before the end of this because I want to get your thoughts on it. I think the biggest cocaine decision that's like the most drastic in this is that they filmed part of this with the same guy who had just shot Blade Runner as the cinematographer 2 years before, and they had a disagreement, fired the Blade Runner guy, and then purposely brought in cinematographers that were worse. In order
we'll show that motherfucker. Yeah.
No, they were like, I don't like the Blade Runner look, which Blade Runner is obviously, I mean, it's still fucking huge, but like, like at this time was like huge. Like they're like, oh, we don't like the Blade Runner look, bringing people that don't have as much experience. So this movie is shot partially by the guy that was the cinematographer for Blade Runner, and then partially by other people,
which adds to the weirdness. But then also think about how many movies tried to look like Blade Runner after Blade Runner. And how much of a drag that is, right? Oh God. It's sort of like, if you think about it, it's like, yeah, man, you know what? I like Nirvana too. I don't want to hear your version of Nirvana. Cut that shit out. It's annoying. Don't do that.
Well, I mean, a lot of movies actually, ripped this one off. Like Back to the Future, for instance. Spielberg saw this movie and said, that's my time machine.
And The Life Aquatic of Steve Zissou, whatever. I watched it a million fucking times as a kid because I was really, really into marine biology. And, yeah.
Steve's. Well, you're wearing the hat, so I was gonna say Steve Scalzo
and Jacques Cousteau. I was trying to, recall that.
Good enough.
I was gonna throw a Z-Jack reference in, but that's fine.
Marine biology, the most important, ideologically speaking, marine biology is the center of everything, and so on.
That's the remake. Is that's who gets to be Buckaroo Banzai?
You don't know Buckaroo Banzai? Buckaroo Banzai. I am the one who plays the rock music, and I am the one who stands on the stage and perhaps will go through the mountain.
I would fund that remake. That sounds incredible. the only allowable remake.
I just want him playing like reading all the lines. I mean, just imagine, let's
crowdfund that shit
at night, and in the dark you are who you.
I'm not exactly entirely kidding when I say let's crowdfund that, because first of all, literally stranger things have happened. But anyway, final thoughts on it. I think it's a movie best experience, not analyzed, but I think it's bizarre and it's a lot of fun and it's worth watching.
I'm upset that neither of you guys said, don't be mean, because remember, we don't have to be mean. No matter where you go, there you are, and so on.
I just assumed you were going to do it. You had the impression down.
Well, I was going to say that was a little bit of a cross between Dracula and Zizek, but it's good.
I want to suck your blood and so on.
He's workshopping the material. Give him a break, man.
All right, Andy. Any final sentence, because I'm trying to, get us out of here while
the big thing is
in this dimension.
This movie is like one of the cornerstones of who I am, which is why sometimes you don't.
Yeah, we can tell
what the hell I'm going on, because I just attack it so deeply. But I think my final thought will be. Oh no, I already said the history line. Never mind. We can go on. That's good.
It would have been really funny just to throw on the outro. My final thought will be. I'll tell you later.
Your final thought should be, I've been ionized, but I'm okay now.
My final thought, and listen, this is going to be a big one. All right? I'll tell you later.
From outside